Good evening, everybody. It is 5:30. It is Thursday, March the 3rd. This is the Town of Spencer Board of Aldermen pre-agenda meeting. And with that, I officially call the meeting to order, and we will start with an invocation and pledge. We'll begin with invocation. Father, thank you for this glorious day. Thank you for the beauty of this season. We thank you for the leadership of our town. We thank you for our residents, our businesses, and those that make Spencer home. Lord, we ask that you be with our world tonight and in the days to come. Amidst the turmoil, we ask that you bring peace. Amidst the division, we ask that you bring harmony. And we ask that you bring this board wisdom, discernment, and guidance as we lead this town. Amen. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to review our agenda for next Tuesday's regular meeting. And so with that, you will see the order of the agenda for Tuesday before you. I would ask, is there anybody willing to volunteer to give the invocation for us next Tuesday night?
I will.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, and then we will have the meeting minutes for consideration. We can add that to the consent agenda if the board so chooses.
I have one question about one thing. In the minute 4, and I have not been able to get onto the website to look at this. I tried again today to find a meeting on the website.
Mm-hmm.
I was on it last week sometime, but couldn't find it again today.
So finding the meeting minutes?
No, finding the YouTube of the meeting.
Oh, okay.
I need some clarification, and maybe you can clarify this for me. There is a departmental report for the planning department. Is it the CAC board that has one vacancy, or is it the HTC that has one vacancy? I can go back.
The CAC presently has 2 vacancies. Had a resignation yesterday, so we do have 2.
But one as of last month.
Right, it was one at
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that is correct.
It
Okay. So I thought that Nick Bishop had resigned from the HTC, and I thought that was the case, and I thought it might have been HTC had a vacancy. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Because I have written in my notes HTC.
Right. Okay. All right. So anything else on the meeting minutes? Does the board want to add that to the consent agenda?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And of course, we will have a time for additions or deletions and adoption of the agenda, but I would ask at this point, is there anything else that needs to be added that we know of now or deleted from the agenda before you for next week?
Is this a recommendation, or is this just something?
No, if there's anything that the board has specifically that they want added to the agenda, or anything that staff needs added to the agenda at this point.
I get one. This underneath recognition, if that's okay, is that part of what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about specifically anything. We'll talk about recognitions here shortly about who wants to do those, but anything specifically that's not on this agenda before you that we feel like needs to be added business-wise.
I'll bring something that I'm just going to bring it to the floor, and if collectively we decide it's a dumb thing to do right now, then I'll shut up and go back in my seat and be quiet. Recently there was a proposal within the county, actually a resolution from one of the political organizations here in Rowan County, sent to the General Assembly and to our 3 state legislators, who they are asking to make all municipal elections partisan. Now, everything I've seen so far has been that's not going to happen or viscerally opposed to it. I believe Mayor Alexander in Salisbury is against it. The Salisbury editorial board was against it. My personal view is that's a terrible, terrible, terrible idea for obvious reasons. We could only barely fill our board as it is, let alone making it charged with partisanship that I think we'd all rather go away. If collectively we feel that's something that we won't say no to, I support that. But if that's something that collectively feel we want to agree with, then I'll, I guess, accept that. And if we want to shut up and not worry about it for now, that's okay too. I just want to bring it up. Again, personally, I think it's a terrible, terrible idea. As a citizen, but that's my 2 cents.
I agree 100% with what you just said. It's the wrong direction to take. I think maybe we should, send a letter stating our opinion too, like the Salisbury board did. I just don't think it's a good idea. It's the wrong way to go.
Other thoughts?
I would say that if anybody wants to know your party affiliation, they can look it up easily enough. Of course, we can't put the one sign in the ordinance.
And one thing I
You
know
still
they
don't like that idea, do you?
at the NCLM was, nonpartisanship. We got to think about all of our citizens, not just the ones that may or may not be in our political party. I mean, to me, that's irrelevant for a job like this.
To speak for every citizen, I'm in support of that.
Our country's politics seem to get in the way of progress these days and get in the way of collaboration. So, okay, other thoughts? So would the board like to develop a resolution specifically for that?
I mean, I think my personal view is that's a good idea. And again, this could be a process that may take a meeting or two,
right,
to get there. But I'm raising it now.
Right.
I think we could write a resolution. Bring it. Maybe can we get it for this Tuesday?
It depends who's gonna draft it.
We could probably find somebody who's written one and plagiarized it.
I mean, I can between now and Tuesday, I could come up with a draft that we can evaluate. And that's not a hard thing. If you want me to do it, that's fine. I can do that.
Okay.
If we want to wait for a meeting or two later, that's fine too. I mean, I'm not trying to dictate this upon anyone. I'm just trying to bring something I think is important.
When would it come to a discussion at the state legislature?
I don't remember
which
of our legislatures addressed it, but one did in the article when it was first proposed about 3 weeks ago and said that it would not, or likely would not, come on the legislative agenda until next year, 2023.
For the short term?
Yeah. But, I mean, things happen quick, and it's a local act, and as I understand it, those are relatively non-controversial as long as they're non-controversial, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it could quickly go into effect if they decided to act.
So why don't we do this? If you're willing to take and then do an initial draft, let's put it on the agenda for consideration. If we feel comfortable with being able to adopt it next Tuesday, we can. If we feel like we need an additional meeting to be able to do some revisions to it, we can do that as well. I think, hopefully the intent of it is that it shows that within local communities like Spencer, we're not going to let politics divide what's doing best for all of our citizens. Okay, thanks for bringing that to our attention. Where would you like to put that in the agenda?
Wherever is best.
Okay, let's do it following the town manager report, if that's okay. Does that work for everybody?
Yep.
Okay.
I would call it a resolution of nonpartisan elections.
Right. I agree. Nonpartisan municipal elections.
period, elections, period.
That won't happen.
One can only live.
Okay. All right, very good. Anything else to be added or deleted from the agenda? Okay, hearing none, the next item will be recognitions. So are there any recognitions that the board members want to make on Tuesday? You have one.
Yeah. I've invited Rusty Miller to come up.
Okay.
And talk to us about the what's going on at the 8th Street Ballpark renovations and the improvements and everything else. So I've invited him to come up and speak.
Okay. Are there others? All right, if you can think of any between now and, if any come up between now and Tuesday, just let me know. I'll be sure to recognize those. All right, we'll then have public comment, and of course then our consent agenda. So as we go through tonight, just let me know if there's anything we should add to the consent agenda. Item 8, we will receive an update on the financial audit from RH Accounting. You did see the note from Mr. Franzese. We will receive an update. My understanding is they will be done at that point and providing us the summary. But
Willing.
also, Lord willing.
Guaranteed?
Also, because they were supposed to be done by the end of February, and we had granted them an extension, they are, my understanding is, requesting yet another extension that will be submitted to the LGC to account for this period of time between the end of February and their finalization next week.
Is that going to have any impact on from us for the LGC?
Peter, you want to address that?
There's no impact so long as we provide this documentation. I mean, if we were not doing the process of keeping them updated with these amended contracts, then there would be they would not appreciate that. But in terms of no, there's no impact other than we really would like this to be completed so we can get a final look at how we finished the year end last year.
Move forward.
Yeah, my understanding is that, you know, they're not going to hold that against us, the LGC, but they do want documentation that we are approving the extension.
Do you know if they found any concern? We won't know that till we get the final report, will we?
Yeah, what they have not. He said there was no material deficiencies. You know, they're not significant findings and that sort of thing. I think we can expect to see some language on separation of duties, internal controls that are typical for an organization of our size, but he said nothing of significant concern.
So tell me, are they actually going to have a draft of the audit for us at that point in time, or because typically we actually have where we enact an item on the agenda where we receive?
I don't know that they're going to have that. It's a matter of they have to send a draft into the LGC, right. And then after that point is when things would be presented to you.
So we should expect that then in April.
I don't know what the LGC's review timing is, but that would be logical.
Anything else on that item tonight? Okay.
Do we know whether they have the people that started out at this still around?
That's a good question. We'll find out on Tuesday, I guess.
Beginning to worry about them.
Yeah, right. All right. Anything else on that? All right. Next item, we will. We heard last month from Mr. Blunt about potential need from a development request standpoint to change South Spencer Avenue, the road name, and Meadow Street, and so we'll get an update on that. So I would suggest keeping that as a regular agenda item as well.
It only affects 5 households, is that correct? 4.
So anything else on that? Anything that we need beyond what has been provided to you in the agenda packet that we might from staff to be prepared to make a decision. Okay. Next item is to consider adopting a text amendment to the Code of Ordinance 22-006 to add a water and sewer main extension policy. Mr. Blunt, you want to give a quick overview for the board just so that they are aware of what's being proposed here?
This would formalize that to some degree for an individual lot, and that's where this started, was an individual lot that wanted to subdivide into several lots and build houses. There was not an existing main in the street in front of these houses. The cost to extend the main to just serve the houses was something he could absorb in his cost, but he didn't know whether we would require the main to be sized large enough for fire hydrant. And I didn't know who to ask permission to tell him one way or the other because it's not in our ordinance. So this would take care of that issue. The other issue is that as we extend water and sewer to probably major projects, not an individual house, but major subdivisions, major industrial projects that are in our ETJ, we have a right based on the agreement we signed with Salisbury when we negotiated the turning over of our system to them for operation to authorize connections to mains in the ETJ. And by having the right to say yes or no, we can attach some conditions to that. The primary condition that this would take care of is if you want to attach to those water mains, you have to agree to annexation. That's how the town can grow. We can't do involuntary annexation anymore, but we certainly can do voluntary annexation. Again, having it as a policy or an ordinance allows us to be fair to everybody, and if somebody objects to it, we pull out the ordinance book and say, here it is in our ordinance, this is what you have to do. It does leave you with some leeway. If you, for some reason, did not want to annex a new development, then you can just say, no, we're not going to annex you. You can say yes to the water and sewer extension, let them pay for it, but then decide not to annex it for whatever reason you might decide not to annex. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, but it also memorializes the authority that you have to control extensions of water and sewer mains in the ETJ. As you saw in the newspaper, lots of things happening. Some of them are going to happen in our ETJ. Right now, we don't have anything on the books to tell those people that they have to be annexed. So that's what we'll be talking about.
Thank you.
A couple of questions.
On the road thing, before I forget about it, I told you this would be looked at citywide when I presented it to you last time. I've already found 6 other instances where we have roads that don't make sense, and they need to be corrected. So this one's of immediate concern because there's a developer that wants to develop a strip of properties, and he can't figure out what the addresses are. And Rowan County can't either because of the way the road splits. So we're going to try to fix this one quickly and then get the other ones if we can. Yes, ma'am.
But just let me make one comment about that. If you don't know what the address is, you're supposed to call Duke Power because Duke Power has more information about it than the post office. I can tell you that for a fact because I had problems getting an address for a new business in Salisbury about 4 years ago, and I had to go all the way up the line before I could. They said, call Duke Energy, call Duke Power. They know. Well,
it's one of those things that gets passed around because we get a lot of calls saying, the post office told us to call you and find out what our address should be.
Yeah.
And I say, I don't know, call Ed Muir at Rowan County. And then Ed sends me a nasty email because he obviously is not in charge of that. So it goes round and round and round until we get it fixed. And that's what we're going to try to do is get some of these things fixed.
My regional contacted the post office. Was appalled.
I could tell you some stories about the post office and addressing it. But I won't do that today.
In regard to what we're talking about, so just for clarification on my part, unless we were to approve, this extending water sewer, if Salisbury Rowan Utilities put it out there, could another municipality come in and annex?
That will be an interesting debate. I had an email from our attorney today because I sent this to him to review, and I've had several conversations with Rowan County's planning department about Salisbury's new policy. I think that's what you're referring to. They are, when a municipality, for whatever reason, decides they can't afford to extend water and sewer to a new development, if it's in Salisbury's or anywhere close to Salisbury's sphere of influence, and certainly if it's close to one of the mains, Salisbury stepping in saying, we will extend water and sewer if you agree to voluntary annexation. There need to be some agreements about spheres of influence. And for municipalities, it's usually where our ETJ is. That's what it used to be for, where we plan to expand into in the future. It's still a good starting point, and we need to sit down with other municipalities and the county to come up with an agreement on how this will work. So I can't give you a definitive answer about whether Salisbury can reach out and grab something if we decide not. But I think they probably could legally. Whether they want to get into that fight, I don't know.
And again, that would be if we don't want to,
Right,
because of proximity,
Right.
based on the state requirements, like what we went through with the
Lexington
Davidson
and
County and
Davidson County,
Lexington.
yeah.
Right. One of the things, though, that we have talked about is the need to sit down with East Spencer and Rowan County and the city of Salisbury, specifically talk through that to make sure we have an agreement in place of how we're going to handle that between the.
And then, out of curiosity, do we already provide fire, police to our ETJ?
No.
We don't do any of that. Let's see. If the developer asks for annexation, can the neighbors in that community fight it?
Can they fight a voluntary annexation?
Mm-hmm.
They can certainly come and speak at public hearings that are required, but they can't stop.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Steve, I've got a couple of questions involving areas that were annexed 40, 50, 60 some years ago into Spencer's city limits, but still retain Salisbury mailing address. But it's not as important as these others. I can address that to you after.
I'll be glad to respond to you. Mailing addresses are primarily set up by the Salisbury Post Office system. We can argue with them all we want to, but they have the ultimate decision-making authority. Our state legislators and federal legislators that would have to get involved for us to change what are now Salisbury zip codes that are actually in Spencer to Spencer zip code.
And my understanding is those Salisbury addresses in Spencer are served by the Salisbury Post, correct?
Yeah.
If it's, we've been through this fight, or I went through this fight in Granite Quarry, and it was a doozy of a fight, and it was a small town fighting the federal government, trying to get some authority to get the mail address to Granite Quarry instead of Salisbury.
Yeah.
We sort of won and sort of lost that fight. It was a long fight. If that's something you want us to look into, we'll be glad to. But be aware it will be a long fight.
So
Well,
my question
it does
is, was
cause
it worth
potential
the fight?
problems.
Yeah.
I know we had one back in the early 2000s when there was a house fire in Long Prairie Farm, and there was some discrepancy over whether or not the particular house was either in the county or in the Spencer jurisdiction. But that's been long resolved. But you know, it addresses that you would assume to be within the Spencer city limits sometimes aren't.
Part of our street naming and street addressing survey will try to find some of those problems and make suggested fixes for the 911 system.
Yeah.
I can't do much about the postal system, but the county's very easy to work with on getting addresses changed to work within the 911 system. So we can help take care of some of that. Let me know if you know of any specifics, and I'll look into them.
Thank you. Okay. We will also consider a budget amendment ordinance. This is for the library budget. The town received $500 donation, and the designation was that it be used by the library for additional purchases. So does the board want to put this on the consent agenda? That would be my recommendation. Or do you want to hold it on the regular agenda?
I think it'd be a good idea to leave it on the regular just for the citizens to know that they can make a donation to the library, and it might encourage somebody else to make a donation.
Do you want to do that, or do we want to have that mentioned during the library report?
Well,
either way.
I think we need to keep it just like it is. I
Leave it
I
on
agree
the-
with her.
Okay,
I think
leave it on the regular
a
agenda.
lot of times we overlook the library, and I think we need to stress it sometimes.
Okay. Very
I
good.
mean, it's a small thing. It's a small thing, but it's
But it's-
important.
Exactly.
That's a pretty good size donation for that library.
That's true.
All right. Next, we'll receive departmental reports and the town manager report. Anything specifically from the board that we want addressed in any of those departmental reports? Okay. And then we will have our item that we've added, the resolution for nonpartisan municipal elections. And then we'll be at comments by the mayor and board members and executive session if needed. Anything else to be added? Yes.
Well, Mayor, if we can, Joel would like to talk with y'all a little bit tonight about the stormwater issue on Kane Street.
Okay.
As it relates to his departmental report.
All right.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the board.
Good evening.
I hope everyone got a copy of the quote. I think everyone did. What the situation is, it's at the end of Kane Street where the open ditch is, intersects with North Moran Extension, right there in that end. There's a catch basin on one side of the property. They just cleared a lot, a 50-foot lot right there. They're fixing to build a house. I think the Rosemans are actually doing that. The contractor that was doing the clearing actually hit a water line that they did not know was there. So it was a 2-inch water line, so we had quite a bit of water off of that property until they could get that water cap. Well, the water ran towards the street, and it was going under the road and coming out of the pipe, but it wasn't going in the catch basin. So basically the same issue we were having on Forestdale. There's a void or something under the street that needs to be fixed before we actually have a collapse at some point. I don't think it's really to that point right this second. But I will say on one edge of the street, there was a void showing. We have packed stone in it and that kind of stuff to stabilize it for the time being. This correction would be to replace the catch basin on the other side, which would be on the north side, the Charles Street side, going that direction. Is to replace it and tie that in with the live water that's coming down that side of the road. There's a live stream that comes in and ties in. Replace the pipe completely across the street, tie it in with a box in the riprap ditch, and would tie in the driveway crossing as well. That would eliminate the problem of having to have a head wall because that road is so close to the edge of that street. And I had him price it kind of both ways. The head wall is a lot more expensive than putting a box and tying the two pieces of pipe together. So we're going to set a box on that side, a box on the other side, completely do the pipe, remove the pipe that's there because we know that there's water not in the pipe. So it's either under it, the side of it, could be a break in the pipe, we're not sure. So that kind of explains, are there any questions about what he's wanting to do? We are going to supply the pipe. I have actually the 24-inch pipe on my yard. Pipe prices are through the roof.
If you can get them.
If you can get it. So I'm going to help him with as much of the product that I have, which is the pipe. That's what I have. So the crossing pipe, the 24-inch pipe, I have on my yard. So we're going to use it. His question is as soon as we can get it in the process, he'll have to place the order, and we'll have to see how long it takes to get the other product. The boxes are crazy to get drainage boxes. The other pipe that he actually has on yard, so we won't have to wait on pipe. But we don't know about the box. He has in the estimate, this is kind of worst case scenario because we're not sure what the road bed's going to look like when we get the pipe out, depending on how much drainage is going beside or under. It could be mush as far down as we want to dig. We're not sure. So in this estimate right here, it actually calls for 100 tons of stone, but we're not sure how much we're going to have to use to stabilize the road. Once we remove the old pipe and then build it back up, we're not going as deep with the new pipe as the old pipe is, but we have to remove the old pipe. So that way the crossing will actually be easier to keep clean on the other side of the street. Instead of being at the very bottom, it's going to be midway, be halfway.
If I'm not mistaken, there's several places like that in Spencer that, when they came in and did the streets or when they built homes, you've got situations similar to what they had right now at the dance company, where they just went in and put, well, this area is wet, we'll just pile dirt, rock in there and pack it down real good and build something on top of it, type of deal. Right. So that's probably because if memory serves me correctly, there used to be a wet area in there. You got a stream coming down, snaking through that, and they just built extension, North Carolina extension over it without doing any proper drainage. So,
yeah, I've seen drawings of North Carolina extension as far as expansion that never came to fruition, and that was along the same time that the rock ditches were installed on one side and the other side with crossing at the street. Now I did go down and we looked and checked what's going under North Carolina extension on the downside of the stream, and that pipe is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that pipe. It's concrete all the way across, single pipe. This, and had he not cleared that lot, opened that water line, we probably would have not found it at this point. It's just that there was a lot of water, and muddy water was going in somewhere, and muddy water was coming out, but it wasn't going through the pipe or the catch basin. So we know that there's some issue going on under there, and we have a lot of traffic on that street, especially school buses. There's going to be construction equipment now because they're going to be building houses, concrete trucks, stuff like that. So, this gentleman that gave this quote, we have used in the past, and it saves us a mobilization charge to and from because he's already on site clearing that lot. So it kind of helps us price wise. But the emphasis is that, and PAL bill money can cover this because it's replacing road structure. It's not increasing. It's not anything like that. So we're still in bounds. But this quote is worst case scenario. So anything that he does not have to use, whether it be stone or any of that kind of stuff, then will be deducted from the total price. But what needs to be understood is we use this amount from the PAL bill. There was only 40, I'm trying to think, I just looked at it a minute, it's 47, 48, somewhere around there in the capital portion of the PAL bill funding. So this would take roughly half. So we're looking at moving, instead of doing a paving this spring, tying it with next year's allotment and doing a paving in the fall. So just wanted to make sure that everybody's on the same page before, you know what I mean, before we go to the route. But it's definitely a problem that needs to be handled, and it needs to be fixed before we have a Forestdale issue, where the road completely falls out. And it's simple rerouting. They would be detour 3-4 days probably for the road crossing. School buses, but it's one block. We can block that, and sometimes the school buses can reverse their routes and make it a little bit easier. Or
does it impact access to anyone's residence?
Anthony on the corner, but we can get him in from the Kane Street entrance, or he actually has an entrance off of North Carolina Extension. So we can actually get him either way. Anybody else that won't impact anybody else, any other resident. And depending on what we run into, the road crossing shouldn't take too long. I don't want to jinx Patrick by any means. But that'll be the first thing he'll do probably, is open the street and find the problem. And then once we find the problem, then we'll know where to go from there. make it easy.
It's a giant sinkhole.
Well, and we don't know. We'll find out. We just know that water's not going where it's supposed to go, and that's never a good thing when it goes under the road. There's 3 utilities that have to be crossed and dealt with. You got a gas main in there. You have sewer and water. So I think we can dodge sewer and water pretty good by the depth that I'm seeing. The gas main is kind of a crapshoot at this point until Piedmont gets out there and lets us know where it's at. So that may change our elevations a little bit on what we can and can't do. So,
Not crap, dude.
well,
That's sewer.
well, if we get into that, that could be bad. We don't want to do any of that. So,
Does that have anything to do with the water pressure on South Street at all?
shouldn't.
I
No,
think there's
ma'am.
been a change in my water pressure to
Oh, has it?
a good change.
Like, up?
Uh,
Don't
Okay. Well, that's,
don't like it.
Take
oh,
that.
yeah.
No.
Yeah, we don't want to complain.
Now I know why
about
mine's been less. You've been taking it.
You've been taking it.
Well, maybe that's
That's
why my
right.
water bill's higher.
That's right. Very good. So, I don't think we need a motion or anything unless that's the way you want to handle it. But
We don't, based on our purchasing thresholds, but we do probably need to just make sure the board is comfortable moving forward with that, just by consensus.
Yeah. Joel, I will say that I was on a meeting yesterday with the League of Municipalities, and
Yes,
there's going to be some increased Powell bill funding coming from the state budget.
very good. Very good. That was the consensus that what they took away from us 2 years ago.
Yeah.
2 years ago. That would be going back plus a little bit, and I'll be grateful for that. So that'll help us out a lot as far as our paving. That was actually would take care of this. What we
And
lost.
hopeful, I mean, the hope would be that we be able to do a little bit more just from a economy of scale
Mhm.
by pushing it to fall and doing a little bit more than
Right.
sort of
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
And Ms. Sledge, I think you asked about the ARPA funding
Oh,
as
right, right.
well. And we need to confirm, but one of the things I heard today was with the ARPA funding for those infrastructure projects, in order for it to qualify, it does have to be hard bid. I think even below the state's purchasing threshold, we'll need to verify that
Okay.
because it's federal funding.
Federal funding.
So,
Well,
know,
and
which
there's
doesn't
some more
make
money
sense.
coming from that from the state budget too.
Right.
That was another thing. The money. Yes.
yeah. And Peter, I think you're going to sit in tomorrow because the state revolving fund is getting money as well, specifically for stormwater infrastructure that'll be distributed to local communities, and they're having a listening session to hear from communities how they feel the funding should be distributed.
Okay. Very good. There's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah. Another thing that they talked about was stream cleanup, being able to remove debris and sediment from streams. You know about
Hop
that?
up there, Joe.
Come on, Joe. I will get out of the way. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for your time. Joe can answer that.
Joe is getting ready to go find some beavers.
That's right.
Yeah, they talked about beaver dams.
So
yeah.
we had a call a week ago with Chris Luke,
That's
maybe
right.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Who was the Rowan County Soil and Water Conservation District leader. And he put us onto that, and the state has allocated $38 million for stream and 100-year floodplain debris removal and the beaver dam destruction and several items, sediment removal. And so we're I'm forging a partnership with the city of Salisbury to explore the opportunity to remove large woody debris from Grant Creek. And I'm working with a gentleman by the name of Levi Coldiron, who is a GIS coordinator and a drone pilot. He has a drone. And so we're going to conduct analysis on the creek and come up with it's a very simple application just based on linear footage, basically. And so we're in the process of investigating that now. The deadline is March 31st. So we're moving quick.
the one thing that they said about the 100-year floodplain was that you couldn't move debris into that. It
Right.
had to be clear from that. So we can use Joel's chipper.
So, well, that's just it. One of the things that you have to take it out of the 100-year floodplain, or you can chip it in place, and it will take a tub grinder, not a type of chipper. It'll
Okay.
a much larger machine. So we're investigating all that, and I'll have a full report when the analysis is conducted. So we're mapping it and could have something pretty soon.
Yeah, we're trying to
So,
kind of
from-
quantify how much.
You're right.
debris
I
would
can
need to be
tell you
removed.
that the distance of just a quick using Rowan County GIS mapping tool, the distance from Grants Creek from Jake Alexander Boulevard to 3rd Street is right at 30,000 square feet. It's 5 miles, of stream, and so if it's cleared, not only does it have the benefit of stormwater flooding mitigation, but it also opens up Grant Creek for a blueway canoe kayak access. And I was on the phone today with a fellow from the Wildlife Resources Commission to see about getting permission to extend the proposal from 3rd Street all the way to the main channel of the Yaqui River, which looks to be pretty clear actually from aerial shot.
When
What about
did
the
all
dam?
this come about, Joe? Because we've been harping on this for a long, long time.
So
Danny Patterson, was
well,
really key
so the
on that.
background on this is that the hurricanes in the eastern part of the state has created a tremendous demand on this type of service, and so I'm sort of imagining this, but I imagine that legislators in that part of the state saw fit to make a point to have it done. And the impression I get is that they were able to attain $38 million to do this, and there may be more, because I feel like it's probably a drop in the bucket for what really needs to be done in the state. And we're having a lot of flooding in rivers and streams everywhere, and so it's just a matter of chipping away at it, and we're going to try to apply some of the funds to our jurisdiction. And we really need Salisbury because they have the right of way. The Salisbury Rowan Utility has the sewer outfall that runs continuously in parallel to Grant Creek, and so that's how we would access it. And so we're working up. We don't have the details of the arrangement made, but so far we're sort of operating on the idea that I'll assist with the application and they will provide the implementation.
But it's great from a collaboration partnership standpoint because it would involve Spencer, it would involve City of Salisbury Stormwater, Public Works, and utilities. And really kind of everybody stands to benefit from it.
And everybody has been very enthusiastic. No one has said no, don't do that. So we'll proceed and keep the board fully informed.
I believe it's the guy from Soil and Water who said that it was, started out with disaster relief, but they had expanded it. It doesn't have to be Stafford Bundy now. They've expanded it so that it covers a disaster before it happens.
That's the idea.
Yeah. And the other thing was the PL 566. Our dam down here at Standback is not involved in that, is it?
I do not know what PL 566 is, so I can't answer it that way. But I do know that there are multiple. It's very surprising. There are a number of different funding sources that are arising relative to high hazard dams. We're working on one of those too.
Yeah.
So we're looking into something that might offset the cost for that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Morris. All right. And so with that, I believe that is everything that will be on the agenda Tuesday and then some. Is there a need this evening to go into executive session for any reason? All right, hearing none. Is there a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting? The motion Right. And motion by Mr. Muhammad, second by Mayor Pro Tem. All in favor? Opposed? All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you all.